We're going to manually register an access point to SmartZone. Access point registration can be done in one of three ways. We can manually configure the controller's control interface IP address via the CLI in the access point. And doing this, we need to note that access point versions 3.x, 100.x, and 110.x and above require one command, set SCG IP, and then the control IP address. In access point versions 9.x and 10.x, two commands are required, set director IP and also set SCG IP. Another option we can utilize is DHCP option 43. Finally, we can use DNS resolution as well. Some prerequisites that we need to look at before we register the access point. The access point in SmartZone must be able to communicate directly. This means that we need to verify that there's no access lists or firewall rules that's preventing this traffic. Valid access point licenses must be available within SmartZone. The model of the access point needs to be supported in SmartZone's current firmware. This can be found in the release notes. Lastly, we need to verify that there's a valid AP country code on the access point. For reference, and this is a good point to pause the video, we provided the communication ports of both TCP and UDP that are utilized during the migration process. We're going to show you how to register an access point to a SmartZone controller via the access point CLI. Before we start, we're going to start a continuous ping to the access point. This will help us understand when the access point is rebooted, but also when the access point comes back online. Next, we're going to go back to the window that's the CLI of the access point, and we're going to type get version. So there's two things here I want to notate before we start. One, the version that's showing on the access point, and also the IP address of the access point. We'll need to reference this later when we look in SmartZone. The software version that's running currently is 110.0. This is incorrect, and SmartZone will update that once it's connected to the controller. Now, when we type a get SCG, this gives us important information about the access point's controller configuration. Currently, we see that the SCG service is enabled, which is good. The AP is not managed by a controller, and the state is in discovery. Lastly, we have the server list. Nothing is found because we haven't configured that yet, and that also reflects that there's no SSH tunnel in existence. Configuring the access point to connect to SmartZone is a two-step process. First, we type set SCG IP and then the address of the controller. In this example, we're using 10.177.89.32. After we hit enter, we type reboot to reboot the access point. Once the access point has begun its reboot, as we can see here, our pings will start to fail. Once the access point has resumed responding to ping, we'll go to the SmartZone GUI and validate that the access point has been discovered. When we began, the GUI showed that it had 3 access points connected to SmartZone. If we refresh the page, now we can see that we have 4 access points connected. If the access point isn't showing connected, it's a good time to check firewalls or filtering. Let's navigate to access points and verify that this access point is connected and that it's begun the upgrade process. We can see the access point that we added. The IP addresses match. Once we select this access point, we can now see the current software version that's running on it. As I said earlier, this is a mismatch. SmartZone is going to upgrade the access point now. We're going to navigate to the Event tab and look at logs from the access point. The log is listed newest entries first. At the bottom, we can see that the access point sent a discovery request to the SmartZone. Then SmartZone approved it, and next the access point was connected. The final piece is we see that the heartbeat was lost. The access point is now upgrading and is most likely in a reboot. If we go back to the General tab and we scroll down towards the bottom, we'll see the configuration status of the access point. This is showing us new configuration because SmartZone is in the middle of not only upgrading the access point, but configuring it as well. Then if we refresh the page and scroll down again, now we can see that firmware has been downloaded. If we go back to the Events tab, now we can see that the access point is back up. We can note that the firmware has been updated and that the new configuration has been applied. The last piece, we're going to go back to the General tab and note that the AP's firmware is 5.1. We also note that SmartZone's firmware is 5.1 as well. That's excellent. The access point is now running the correct version of firmware and it's been migrated successfully to SmartZone. Check the description box below for great resources located on the Ruckus support portal. There you can find KV articles, documentation, videos, and more. Thanks for watching.